The rest is, and again, I know he spoke today. And yesterday, Montgomery alluded to changes. That he might have to seriously consider some. And we think Grzelcyk is an automatic one, and it's an easy one to slot in there in place of Forbort. No big deal. It's whether there's going to be more global changes. But it starts with Patrice Bergeron. I'm going to get into that first before we get into other changes. Now, he skated again on Thursday morning by himself. He skated on Wednesday by himself. I know this is the playoffs and timetables change, but as we saw with Taylor Hall and Foligno when they were coming back from injury, they skated by themselves for a week or so. Then they wore red contact jerseys for a couple of weeks.
Usually about a 10-day window
Yes.
from the time you start skating on your own to when you
And
can come back.
that's in the normal world.
Right.
Now, it's the playoffs and the timetable could be accelerated, but the fact that he's only skating on his own right now really starts to make you think you're probably going to be without him for the entire series, or maybe you get him back late, or maybe you rush it in a dire situation if you're facing elimination and say we got to go. So
Yeah.
I think the hope was to get him fully healthy that they were going to try to get the whole series the way it's looking now.
Yep.
So let's just do you kind of agree with that assessment?
Well, I think in the playoffs that it changes a little where a guy can go from skating on his own to back in the lineup pretty quickly. It can be accelerated, as you said, depending on the circumstances. So would I bet on him playing in Game 3? Probably not, just given where he is right now. If they go down 2-1 in this series, could he be an option to go down to Florida and play in Game 4? Certainly. I think, in the perfect world, I think what the Bruins were hoping was they were going to win last night, and then you can kind of hold them out for the entire first round if you've really got a stranglehold over the Panthers, and you think you're going to coast in 4 or 5 games to a series win, and just give them that extra time to heal and get back towards 100%, then great. But I think as the series plays out, if things don't change, if they find out they really need him, it is going to get accelerated and he would come back. But if I were a betting man, if I were betting on FanDuel right now, I would probably not be betting for Patrice Bergeron to be playing in Game 3.
No, not Game 3. And again, I really do think the way it's being set up right now is that he's still optimally a little bit away.
The bigger question, Zannis, for me in this whole thing is, when are we going to really go after the Bruins for allowing this to happen, where he played in Game 82 in Montreal that was meaningless? And, I understand he wanted to play because his friends and family were there. It's the last game he's probably ever going to play at the Bell Center.
His life.
It was very meaningful for him personally, and I get all that.
Right.
And I think he, from what I can gather, he really wanted to play, and that was a consideration. And who's going to say no to Patrice Bergeron when he feels strongly about something like that? But this probably is one of those situations where I think the Bruins should have put their foots down a little more firmly and said, you know what, Patrice, we're going to sit this one out and get ready for the postseason, and you're not going to play. And I can understand both why they had reasoning. They were going to have a few days off. They wanted to make sure that everybody was up to game speed when they went out and played, and there was some logic behind playing more of their regulars than not in that last game. But 37-year-old captain that is banged up after a full season, that you want as good as he can be going into the playoffs, that's not going to be affected one way or the other if he sits for 5, 6, 7 days without a game before going into the playoffs. You really hope, as somebody that wants to see Patrice Bergeron get a chance to really be at his best in what could be his last playoff for the Boston Bruins, that he gets that chance, and that playing in that Game 82 that didn't matter one bit one way or the other doesn't end up impacting the Bruins, and impacting this dream record NHL season that they had before it even really gets started. That would be a really sad end to this entire season and situation if that's the way it plays out. And you just hope that doesn't happen as a hockey fan.
Yeah, that would be a real bummer, Joe. It's again, the Bergeron thing, I think you have to look at it as a kind of equal responsibility. I do agree. It makes a lot of sense what he wanted to do. And you're just, probably Montgomery's thinking okay, but please. And then, what bugs me a little bit is some of the subterfuge or the obfuscation here after the fact. Lifted for precautionary reasons, leaning on the illness, reluctant to say it was an injury. there, that's kind of like. I think they were hoping it would resolve itself before it became an issue and before people would start pointing fingers.
Yeah, before they would start getting second guessed. There's no doubt about it.
Again,
and it's funny when it first originally happened, and he was lifted after the first period, and it said upper body precautionary. People are like, it's no big deal. He just wanted to come out and go hang out with his family and friends who were there, and I'm sure he just wanted to come out of the game. I was thinking to myself, and I really didn't go off on Twitter at the time when people were saying that, but I'm like, I've known this guy for 20 years. I know Patrice Bergeron pretty well. He is not the kind of guy that's going to show up, wave his hand, do a little pageant wave at the Bell Center, play a period, and then leave his teammates out there to play the final 40 minutes without him and fend for themselves. That is not the kind of player he is. That is not the kind of leader he is. As soon as he left that game after the first period, I said, that's not good. Like, that's trouble, because he would never do that. Have it designed, scripted out. I'm going to play one period and then bolt after that and watch the rest of the game from the ninth floor or the catwalk or whatever they have up there at the Bell Center. He wouldn't do that, and at that point, it kind of raised my eyebrows to this might be trouble. But I think you're right. When it got mixed in with players getting sick, it gave them cover for a few days. If he missed one game, to kind of say, it was sickness and not really get questioned about it. Now, as it goes on, the second guessing factor goes up and gets elevated, and rightfully so. I think it's when it's all said and done, if it impacts this playoff run, it absolutely should be second guessed in a huge way.
In every way, and Bergeron, and trying to press it himself, if that were in fact the case, or Montgomery allowing it. But you're right. I mean, even the way Montgomery answered the question, finally coming clean prior in the pregame media availability prior to Game 2, wouldn't even say injury, just said it's not an illness. So they're trying so hard to not say the guy's hurt. And who knows what it is, but upper body could be a lot of different things. And what you're worried about is not only that Bergeron's return, is delayed or he might not be able to play soon. It's that when he comes back, we've seen this guy play an entire postseason with a collapsed lung, okay? Or not the entire postseason.
He played one Stanley Cup final game with it, which is more than good enough for me.
We've seen this guy play hurt. How many times, and especially some of these Bruins players, these forwards, who are not afraid of physicality, but might not necessarily have the build for it. How many of these, after long playoff runs, you find 6, 7 guys, 8 guys all going under the knife with stuff that probably would have knocked them out for a month or so in the regular season that they just played through? What you're worried about is not only whether he can return in time to help you in a series that now is not in the bag, but are you getting a reduced version of him coming back if he's battling something that's going to nag and not ever be right? You've just really handicapped yourself by, taking your best player and forcing him to play at 70, 80, whatever percent.
Yeah, and that's what happened in 2019 with David Pastrnak, right? When he fell down and injured his thumb. And then when he came back, he wasn't quite the same guy in the playoffs. He was hesitant to shoot, missing with the one-timer, clearly the hand and the thumb were bothering him in the postseason, and they end up losing in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. And you say to yourself, hypothetically, could 100% David Pastrnak with no issues have been a difference in them winning rather than losing when it got to a Game 7? And there's a lot of other factors involved, and you could blame the 2015 NHL draft for not providing them impact players that could have helped them in that situation as well. There was a lot of things at play there for them losing when it seemed like the way the Red Sea parted for them to win that cup and take care of the Blues. But you're right. It's the same kind of situation where you wonder when he does come back what kind of shape he's going to be in, and if he's going to be able to get back to 100%, or if this is something that's going to nag him and be something that's kind of chronic throughout this postseason. You certainly hope not.